So it just seems like more of the same situation where bioweapons are easy to obtain. There's lots of people out there with knowledge about, how to purify this stuff, and it leaves no footprints. So it's really ideal as far as being a weapon. One thing that doesn't happen is that anthrax is not contagious person to person, that you have to come in direct contact with spores. So somehow or another, if there's a new wave of anthrax going around in the world, then there's been some type of direct contamination that's occurred. Mm-hmm. And that's really all I know.
Well, but the interesting thing about the attacks that swayed Daschle and the rest, and don't make a mistake, ladies and gentlemen, for one moment in me thinking that Tom Daschle was any kind of good guy. This guy had to be as morally bankrupt as the rest of them to get where he was in his position. However, it seemed like they wanted to ramp up a panic, and they did successfully, because they brought their attack dogs out from every quarter. They shut down post offices. They quarantined areas. They played the same kind of news information over and over again on all of the talking head stations, CNN and the like. So it worked as a tool of terror. But what we do know years later is that tool of terror was probably, if not certainly, born in the United States, and probably born within an intelligence organization of some sort, in my view. But you mentioned to me that Stephen Hatfield had obvious connections to intelligence organizations. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, just looking back over the reports, he was a cohort of CIA personnel. He had CIA, employees stand up for him and testify to his character when they were, suspecting him. For a long time, he was the only suspect in those cases, but a pretty strange events. They closed the case on anthrax. As far as I know, they never indicted anyone. They finally came up with one suspect, and it wasn't Stephen Hatfield. It was Bruce Ivans.
Some dead guy.
He worked for the government. He worked at Fort Detrick. Right, and he supposedly committed suicide on the 29th of July in 2008. And he was about to be indicted on charges. At the time, he knew about it, and then he turned up dead.
Well, isn't it interesting, though, Jen, that they did have pictures of a man breaking into the anthrax secured area who didn't have the clearance to be there, Jewish gentleman, who had already gone around and threatened people about, hating Muslims and the rest of it. They have him on film going into the secured area without authorization. And then he mysteriously filtered out of the organization that he was working for, and went on his merry way. And nobody ever brought up the fact that this guy had all of the MO requirements to be a prime suspect, and yet they didn't do anything about him. So this is the FBI working for someone other than the American people, in my view, when they don't even look at the guy that should be a prime suspect as being a suspect at all.
Yeah, well, I think that's an event that happened back in 1992.
No. It's when
sure about that?
It's when this anthrax went missing out of this laboratory. This guy was seen going into that secured area, and it was not long before all of this stuff started happening. Jewish gentleman.
Well, yeah, it's a possibility, though, that whole thing is a red herring. They've never proved that the type of anthrax that was out there, causing harm, infecting people, was a weaponized type.
Well, that's not what that's not what they said in the alternative press. Everyone.
No, that's not what they. Well, it's mixed. The reports are mixed. So I haven't sorted that part out. But I'll tell you, the part that really interests me was that the initial victims of the anthrax had been infected with cutaneous anthrax. They said. The kind that develop lesions on your skin, and that the first victim of the inhalation anthrax worked down in Florida. He worked at a company called American Media, and this was the headquarters of the National Enquirer, and some of the huge tabloid papers that circulate in America.
Yeah.
National Enquirer, the Globe, the Sun, the Examiner. Very interesting who owned that building at the time. It was owned by a company called Evercore Partners. And when you look at those people, this is like the very top of the investment banking world. It was Blackstone Group alumni that formed this company. They had Tony Pritzker on their board of directors.
Which, if they don't remember who he is, ladies and gentlemen, that's the Chicago Pritzkers that were involved with the Brothmans and the Crown family early on during the heyday of Capone and the rum runners and all of the stuff coming in out of Canada, and they made their fortune in organized crime. And now, of course, they've laundered their money into legitimate businesses and become leading members of the society they live in, or so one would think. Truth is, they're still involved in crime and shenanigans, and these are the people also that were keeping an eye on Golda Meir in her ascent to becoming the prime minister of Israel. She was from Wisconsin, just up the road from where they were, and they were big promoters of her. And also very close ties to Axelrod and to Rahm Emanuel out of the Chicago crime gang, and they also had connections to Strauss over at the University of Chicago. And so, yeah, that's the same family. A background check on this family. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they certainly had all the connections right in this company, American Media, to stage this whole event, if that was their aim. They had a finance minister of Mexico on their board of directors. They had a CEO. His name was David Pecker, and he worked before he worked for American Media. He worked for the largest magazine publisher in the world, which is owned by a defense contractor called Matra, and that's connected to the BAE Systems. This is the high-tech defense missile providers, missile defense,
British Aerospace,
the works.
British Aerospace, BAE.
Yep.
BAE. Yeah, well.
So, you put all those pieces in place just with this one company, and from this event where the first victim died down there in Florida, they were never able to actually connect that to a specific letter. No specific letter was found. And in fact, they didn't launch an investigation until the man died. And then the employees of that building never went back in the building. And it was very interesting to me reading somebody's recollection that worked there, that the building housed the only collection of all of those newspapers. There was no, they were in the process actually of transcribing those to computer files, and the whole building was off limits, closed down, went into the hands of the inspectors for.
So basically, what you're saying is the archives of those publications were never to be seen again.
Yes.
Now, is it possible that they stumbled on something in one of their publications that they didn't want to see the light of day, and maybe it'll never be will never be part of real history? Yes,
sure, makes sense to me. They had back issues from the founding of those papers from the 1950s, and it has a strange history anyway. We're talking about the National Enquirer, which was founded by a well-known mafia son, a man named Gene Pope. And, it's really quite a story, just looking at this event. And, for never having proved that, for closing the case,